Now let's take a look at the right side of the Indiana Soil Evaluation Scorecard for agricultural sites. The first section on the right side of the scorecard is Land Use Overview. The first question there is question 15, Restore Original Vegetation to, and we will mark either A, wetland, B, prairie, or C, mesic forest. If the soil is poorly drained, we will mark A, wetland. If the soil is somewhat poorly, moderately well, or well drained, and has a black surface horizon of greater than 10 inches thick, then we will mark B, prairie. For all other soils, we will mark C, mesic forest. Moving on to the next question, question number 16. Is this soil prime farmland? We will mark it yes if it meets all four of these conditions. 1. The subsoil texture is not sandy. 2. It is greater than 20 inches to bedrock or coarse sand and gravel limiting layer. 3. The slope is less than or equal to 6%. And 4. It is not a floodplain. If the soil does not meet all four of those conditions, then we will mark no, it is not prime farmland. Section B, Erosion and Compaction Potentials. Question number 17. Is it high potential for erosion by water? We'll mark that yes if either less than or equal to 20 inches to limiting layer and the slope is greater than 2%, or if it is greater than 20 inches to the limiting layer and the slope is greater than 6%. And just be aware that the limiting layer can be any of the four types of limiting layer that we'll recognize in the soil judging contest: bedrock, dense till, fragipan, or coarse sand and gravel. Another way of stating this would be that all soils with a slope greater than 6% are going to have a high potential for water erosion, and all soils that are completely flat with a slope of 0 to 2% are going to be no for high potential of water erosion. And then you have this gray area of soils that have a slope between 3 and 6%, and on those soils they will have a high potential for water erosion if the limiting layer is found within 20 inches of the surface. Question 18, high potential for erosion by wind. We will mark this yes if the surface texture is either sandy or moderately sandy. Question number 19. High potential for soil compaction will be marked yes if the natural soil drainage is either poor or somewhat poorly drained and the surface is not sandy. Section C, buffers and cover crops. Question number 20 is grassed waterways. We're going to mark this yes if the slope is 3 to 18%. If the slope is greater than 18%, it's not going to be recommended for this land to be row cropped. It's going to be in permanent vegetation, so a grass waterway does not make any sense in that situation. And on flat land with a slope of 0 to 2%, grass waterways are typically not recommended because they fill in too quickly with sediment, and the lifespan of the waterway is shortened greatly. Question number 21, windbreaks, and this is talking about trees or shrubs that are planted around the border of a crop field. We're going to mark it yes if the surface texture is either sandy or moderately sandy. Question number 22, filter strips, and these are strips of permanent vegetation that run along and parallel to a drainage ditch or a stream that transects the field. We're going to mark it yes if the slope is less than 18%. This is another one of those situations where if the slope here is greater than 18%, we're going to recommend that that field be in some sort of permanent vegetation anyway, so there's not going to be any need for a filter strip. The whole field is going to be essentially a filter strip. Question number 23. This is asking us what is the most significant benefit of the cover crop if we're going to plant a cover crop. And here we will mark it A, that the most significant benefit is to scavenge nitrogen, and we'll do that if the slope is 0 to 2%, or the slope is between 3 and 6%, and we have a sandy subsoil or a coarse sand and gravel limiting layer. We will mark number 23 as B, no need for a cover crop, if the slope is greater than 18%. And again, this falls into the same category as some of the previous questions, where if the slope is greater than 18%, it's not going to be recommended that this be row cropped to begin with. It should be in permanent vegetation, and in that case, there's no need for a cover crop. We're going to mark C, that the most significant benefit of cover crops is erosion control for all other soils. And another way of looking at this is that we will mark C for soils with a slope between 3 and 18% that do not have a sandy subsoil or a coarse sand and gravel limiting layer. Section D, cropping practices. Question number 24, timber stand improvement. This will always be marked yes. Question number 25, permanent pasture. This will be marked yes if the slope is less than or equal to 25%. On land with a slope of greater than 26%, pasture is not recommended. Grazing livestock is not recommended on those steep slopes. Question number 26, crop rotation. This will be marked yes for soils with a slope less than or equal to 18%. Again, this keeps coming up over and over again. If the slope is greater than 18%, row crops are not recommended. So it's going to be in a native vegetation or a woodland or a permanent pasture. So we're not using a crop rotation when we're not planting row crops.
Section E, tillage practices. Question 27, no-till. We want to mark this yes if the slope is 6% or less, and either the soil is well or moderately well drained, or if it is poorly or somewhat poorly drained, it does not have a clayey surface. Question number 28, moldboard or chisel plow. We can mark this yes if it satisfies all three of these conditions. The slope is 0 to 2%, the surface texture is medium or finer, and the soil is either poorly or somewhat poorly drained.
Section F, water management. Question number 29, drainage. We will mark drainage yes if both of these conditions exist. 1, the drainage class is either poorly or somewhat poorly drained, and 2, the landform is not a floodplain. Question 30, irrigation. We will mark this yes if both of these conditions exist. 1, the slope is 6% or less, and either the subsoil is sandy or moderately sandy, or there is a coarse sand and gravel layer in the top 40 inches. Question number 31, terraces. We will mark terraces yes if all of these conditions are met. 1, the soil is not poorly drained. 2, there's greater than 40 inches to a limiting layer, and this limiting layer can be bedrock, dense till, fragipan, or coarse sand and gravel. 3, the slope is 3 to 12%, and 4, subsoil texture is medium or finer. It must meet all 4 of those conditions to be marked yes for terraces. Section G, plant nutrient application. Question 32, nitrogen. We will apply a high rate of nitrogen if all of these conditions are met. 1, it is greater than 40 inches to a limiting layer. 2, subsoil and surface texture are medium or moderately clayey. 3, the soil drainage is either poorly drained or somewhat poorly drained. And 4, the surface color is black. We will mark apply a medium rate of nitrogen if all of these conditions apply. 1, it is greater than 20 inches to a limiting layer. 2, the subsoil and surface texture is moderately sandy or finer. And 3, the slope is less than or equal to 12%. We will mark apply low rate of nitrogen to all other soils. Question 33. Phosphorus. And these soil test values will be marked on the site card. We will answer question 33 as add phosphorus if that soil test level is less than 15 parts per million. We will mark it as none if the site card says that the soil test was 15 to 100 parts per million. And we will mark question 33 with the answer deplete if the soil test level for phosphorus is greater than 100 parts per million. Question number 34, potassium. Again, the soil test results will be indicated on the site card. We will mark number 34 as add potassium if the soil test result is less than 100 parts per million. We will mark it as apply none if the potassium soil test level is between 100 and 250 parts per million. And we will mark it deplete if the soil test for potassium is greater than 250 parts per million. Question number 35, lime. We will add lime if the pH is 6.4 or lower, and we will mark it as none if the pH is greater than or equal to 6.5. And again, just like with the phosphorus and potassium, the pH will be marked on the site card. Section H, nutrient pollution potential. Question 36, nitrogen pollution potential. Nitrogen tends to become dissolved in water and move where the water moves. We will mark this as high for groundwater pollution potential if both of these conditions are met. 1, we have a sandy subsoil and or coarse sand and gravel limiting layer, and 2, the soil is moderately well or well drained. We will mark number 36 high for surface water if both of these conditions are met. 1, the soil is somewhat poorly or poorly drained, and 2, it is not a floodplain. We will mark number 36 medium for all other soils. Number 37, phosphorus pollution potential. Phosphorus tends to become absorbed onto soil particles and leave the field via soil erosion. So we will mark number 37 as high if the slope is greater than 12%. We will mark it as medium if the slope is 7 to 12%, or if the slope is 3 to 6% with a medium or moderately clayey surface soil texture. We will mark phosphorus pollution potential as low for all other soils.
This concludes the second of this 3-part series. Again, if you found it useful, please let me know in the comments section. And if you didn't find it useful, if you have some other constructive criticism for me, put that in the comments section as well. Thank you for watching.